Welcome back to Vikings Vantage, presented by Pepsi. Gabe Henderson here alongside Chris Corso and our guest of the day, Vikings beat writer Sam Ekstrom from the Purple Insider. Sam, what's going on, man?
It's going pretty well, Gabe. Thanks for having me on. I bet you've added a few notches to your belt this week in terms of being a true Minnesotan with the polar vortex and surviving it. That's a big deal. I don't know what the weather was like in Washington for you, but this is as bad as it gets.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. I think I've contemplated the move about 10 times in the past 2 days, but I'm here, and here we are covering the Vikings again this offseason. So this is a unique time, right? I mean, this is the time where, the optimism starts to build up, right? For fans, for media, you start to think about, all right, what should the Vikings do? What shouldn't they do? But before we get that far, what was your take on this Vikings season to this point right now where we are right now?
Yeah, I feel like this was destined to be sort of a retooling year, and it was. At some point, you were going to have to reset your cap. You're going to lose some of your veterans. They had an unprecedented run of like half a decade with the exact same defense. That doesn't happen in today's NFL, and they were going to have to pay the piper at some point, and that was last year. They didn't have a lot of depth. There was no margin for error, so when they lost some guys to injury like Eric Hendricks and obviously Danielle Hunter, that really put them behind the eight ball. I still really like what they have on offense. I feel like as bad as things were at times on defense, that was still an offense that could have even won a couple more games for you if things had gone the right way. The ball bounces a little differently. They didn't have a lot of luck late in games. They didn't have a lot of injury luck last year. So things already started out kind of tenuous, and then the slippery slope kind of got him. A little bit of Murphy's Law last year, but I feel like this team's positioned well to continue its odd numbered year trend where every other year they make the playoffs, they bounce back. 2015, 17, 19, and now 2021, I think still shapes up pretty well for the Purple.
Sam, I bring up the odd number stat to Gabe being the first year guy over here. I bring that up to him like every week, Gabe.
Every week, by far.
Say the least. But yeah, Sam, I know you've been covering the team a long time now. You've seen the ins and outs of these dominant defenses over the years. But this year, Coach Zimmer says in the offseason that this was the best offense that he's seen since 2014, being at the helm with the Vikings. So what are your overall takeaways just on the offense? We're going to get into the KLINT hire as well, but tell us your thoughts on the offense and how they performed this past season.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it was a really good offense, and I think there was still some meat on the bone too. I mean, they were 11th in points scored, 4th in yards per game. Some of the deeper stats have them at like 8th in DVOA, 18th in points per drive. You can slice it any number of different ways. I would say they were a top third offense. I don't know if I'd go as far to say as they were a top 5 offense if you go by yards. I think they were solid. And I think there's still another level. I think once you kind of get a full offseason to account for what you have in Justin Jefferson and what he can do in the passing game, I think you can really unleash this thing. And they're going to have another year sort of with this same or similar system. You've got a lot of the same pieces back and some continuity on offense, except for play caller, which has been sort of sticky for the Vikings to have the same voice for 2 straight years. Other than that, there's a lot of good things coming back, and obviously Dalvin Cook's coming off his best year as well. So I feel like if you add maybe a couple pieces in protection, maybe grab another depth wide receiver or tight end, there's a lot to like about this offense, and Kirk Cousins keeps adding kind of elements to his game every year. Last year, it was the mobility aspect. He was very mobile late in the year. If he cleans up some of those turnovers, man, and can have like a 2019 type season again, the sky's the limit for this unit.
I'm gonna pick up with what Corso said about KLINT later on, but I gotta follow up on this. Your last answer, you said if the Vikings have a receiver at that 14th spot, if somebody's there, a tight end or receiver, that we probably should take him. So I was looking at Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock draft, and he has the Vikings picking Devontae Smith at 14. Like, is that a pick that the Vikings should entertain, or should they move back if that's the case?
Yeah, I've given this a lot of thought, and I would love the prospect of adding another star to this group. with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, bringing in a third wide receiver. That's reminiscent of the 98 team with Moss and Carter and Jake Reed. I mean, that could be 3 deep all over again, right, Corso?
That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if it's in the team's plans. Obviously, I'm not in the meeting rooms. I know that this is not per se a 3 wide receiver offense, and you're not going to take like a star at number 14 to play a Chad Beebe amount of snaps. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're willing to sort of open up the passing playbook, spread things out a little bit more, if that's your intent to revamp the identity of this offense, then yeah, you should definitely go for it. I just don't know if that's in the team's plans, because Mike Zimmer has expressed that he's very happy with the scheme they run, which is a lot of multi-tight ends, a lot of fullback, a lot of running the ball with Dalvin Cook. And that's totally fine if that's the route they want to go. I would love the idea of trading back in the draft and trying to acquire a second-round pick. I think second-round picks are critical when you look at who this team's picked up in recent years with Eric Kendricks and Mackenzie Alexander, who is a productive starter. Brian O'Neill is a really good tackle. Those are all second-round picks. You can find stars in that round of the draft. So if you have a chance to move back in the first, still get like a really good defensive lineman and add a second-round pick, I'm all for that.
I got to put you on the spot here. I think we're about 10 weeks away from the draft coming up here when the Vikings are slated to have that 14th pick, as Gabe said. I don't know if you've looked into the college film yet or gotten to that point, but if you're picking and on the clock for the Vikings, I know Coach Zimmer might have a heart attack if the wide receiver gets suggested at that 14th spot. But what would you do in the spot there, Sam?
If I'm staying in that spot, I know that it's a pretty top-heavy draft at wide receiver, pretty top-heavy draft at quarterback, pretty top-heavy draft at defensive line. So I think my hope is for the Vikings, okay, maybe the 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, top 12. Couple of those wide receivers go off the board. Maybe there's a run where 3 or 4 of them go off the board. Okay, now we're going to get the second best or maybe third best defensive lineman that's out there at great value. Maybe that's Kwity Paye. I think he's an incredible like specimen physically. You always want to compare guys to Danielle Hunter, right? But he's just a physical freak, kind of in that same vein. So I'd take the best defensive lineman on the board, maybe defensive end. Coach Zimmer's expressed the desire to add pass rushers to this group, whether that's 3 tech or defensive end. So I'm looking defensive line at number 14. Maybe Kwity Paye, maybe it's Gregory Rousseau. We'll see where the chips fall. We'll see who I like after I watch a little more of that all 22.
Love it.
You talked about the draft, but before we get to the draft, we still have free agency. And with the reduced salary cap, that makes every team think more strategically of how they want to attack free agency. So with, free agency being very secondary heavy, and us not knowing the future of Anthony Harris, have you seen any guys in free agency that the Vikings should, look to attack or look to pursue in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked through all the positions, and you mentioned, Anthony Harris specifically. I think you could go after a guy like Duron Harmon to be that guy. He had a great career in New England. He was the right-hand man with Devin McCourty, and then got traded in 2020 when the Patriots were shaving all their salary cap, and had a productive year with the Lions. But I think he's a perfect free safety option that's reliable in pass coverage, can let Harrison Smith do his thing in the box. I think he'd probably come at, $4 million per year, which would be pretty reasonable. He's 30 years old, still has plenty left in the tank. I'd love someone like that, or maybe Jaquiski Tartt at safety. If he can stay healthy, he's a good playmaker for San Francisco. He's just dealt with injuries a lot. He's missed 24 games over the previous 4 years. So, and then I'd add a corner too. Like, I think this team had options to add veteran help at cornerback last year, and they didn't choose to do that. And then injuries really ravaged that group. So I'd add maybe someone like Nickel Roby-Coleman, who wasn't phenomenal with Philadelphia last year, but was really productive in previous years with the Rams, and is an excellent slot option. Or maybe someone like Troy Hill, if he's affordable. He was good with the Rams last year in the secondary. So yeah, I'm adding to that group. We don't know about Harris. I like the young pieces they're bringing back with Gladney and Dantzler, but I still want depth there. And they're not spending a lot at cornerback. So I think you can afford to bring in a medium-priced veteran just to add sort of an insurance policy.
I want to delve into free agency a little bit more with you, Sam. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of tough decisions that Rob Brzezinski and general manager Rick Spielman are going to have to make this offseason, whether it's an Anthony Barr coming back. Anthony Harris was brought up as well. So what do you think is the toughest decision that they are going to have to make? Like, what's the one that's like, damn, we have to go this way or that way, and give us where you would go in that tough decision?
I think it's definitely Riley REIFF, because he's coming off his best season as a Viking. He was, I think if you look at all tackles who had over 1,000 snaps last year, he had the fewest pressures allowed. He was really good. The problem is that he represents the largest cap savings if you were to release him, which is compelling. Like, you can save $15 million or whatever it is and sort of, I would say, double your free agency capital. That's intriguing, but you also don't want to leave a hole at maybe the most important position on the offensive line. I think I would probably offer him a short extension, try to reduce the cap number for next year, get that down, maybe half of what it is now, and then give him some small guarantees in 2021 and 22. See if he can duplicate his best season as a Viking. And if he does, you're golden. Obviously, if you let REIFF go, you have a lot of money, but you still got to find his replacement. Maybe that's Ezra Cleveland. We didn't see a lot of him at tackle last year. Otherwise, you'll have to go out and find someone like Kelvin Beachum or DeMar Dotson or move Brian O'Neill to left tackle. You're going to have to get creative to fill that spot. So I think Riley REIFF's a really, really tough decision.
That's a very interesting point. But I think after watching last year's season, there's probably more holes on the defense than there are on the offense. So however the Vikings figure out the Riley REIFF situation, I feel like they'll be in good hands regardless because of all of the people that are coming back. But with Clint Kubiak at the helm, what do you think changes for this Vikings offense?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think they leaned so heavily on Dalvin last year that I think the obvious correction, if you're going to course correct, is to balance it out a little more. They were pretty run heavy on like second and long situations, second and short situations relative to their peers in the league. And I know this is an offense that's built around Dalvin. Like, you got to ride, the workhorse back, and he's paid nicely to do that and to get a lot of work. But I think if they balance the run pass a little bit more, put the ball in Justin Jefferson's hands, and give Dalvin a break too. He absorbs a lot of hits. He's had injury issues in his career. Toss the ball around, get everybody involved, and make the offense just a little more unpredictable, I think, is the path I would take. I like the play action that they've always run, with Stefanski and with Kubiak. I feel like that's the play to get Jefferson and Thielen open downfield. I would just throw it a little more intermediate, throw it more on first down, throw it more on second down, try to set yourself up, with more third and manageables, or just avoid third down altogether.
Yeah. You bring up Justin Jefferson, and I have to bring up the other big coaching hire that was made for the Vikings, and that's the wide receiver coach, Keenan McCardell. Normally, some of these coaches you hear and you don't get a name like that, a guy who played 17 years in the NFL. He literally said he took the job because of Justin Jefferson. So what do you think his impact is going to be on Justin? Because like you said earlier, I mean, I don't think you can argue the fact that you want to get Justin Jefferson the ball more when he has a season like he did last year.
Yeah, I think McCardell brings a great credibility to the room just because he's got sort of the clout of name recognition. Everybody knows that name. I mean, if you grew up in the 2000s, you've heard of Keenan McCardell. And I remember getting a chance to talk to Keenan in 2018 when the Jaguars came to the Twin Cities for joint practices. And I got to talk to him about his relationship with Stephon Diggs and the influence he had on Stephon Diggs when he was in college. And it's easy, I think, to project that on now to another young guy in Justin Jefferson. And some of the things that he can do with Justin mentally, the ways he can get him to watch film, sort of the intangibles that you don't always think about when you're covering the team. There's so much more to wide receiver than just running the routes and catching the ball. It's a mental game. It's a chess match against you and the defensive back. And Keenan's going to know all of the intricacies of what that entails. So I think it's a dynamite hire, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from Keenan on how that relationship is building.
Yeah, I grew up a Keenan McCardell fan also, seeing him and Jimmy Smith, the dynamic duo in Jacksonville. But from one of the interesting conversations I've had with Keenan, he said that, he's been the number one guy. He's been the number two guy. He's been the number three guy and the four guy. So he understands how it all works. But going back to your point of with Clint Kubiak having, a more balanced offense, not being run heavy, how important do you think that wide receiver number 3 position is for this offense?
Yeah, I think that's always the unsung position in the offense, because that's someone who can pick up that clutch third down, because you're using the third wide receiver most in those critical downs. And I think credit to Chad Beebe for putting together a nice, solid season in 2020. He stayed healthy for the first time in a long time. And I think he's definitely got a place on this team. But if you want to add another body there, I wouldn't complain about that. Danny Amendola is sitting on the free agency market. He's Mr. Consistency at age 35, never shows any wear or tear. He picks up first downs. He doesn't drop balls. I think that's pretty compelling. And even if you don't splash for a Devontae Smith, this is still a really good wide receiver draft as well. So find somebody in the middle rounds to add to the mix. And you're going to get KJ Osborne back. He might have improved. BC Johnson in his third year might have improved. I think you can count on probably some positive progress from guys that are already on the roster. So I think it's an important position. And if you're going to throw the ball more, at some point, defenses are going to hone in on just Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. You need that third option, because we've seen that if an offense gets a little too predictable, that the defense knows how to take that away. So you got to have that additional option. Maybe it's Irv Smith lining up more on the outside and sort of being that third wide receiver. There's a lot of ways that you can go about it, but acquiring a little more depth at wide receiver, I think is a good thing.
Last one for me, Sam. The reason why we have you on the show is you joined Matthew Collar at the Purple Insider with a new role covering the Vikings as a beat reporter. So kind of tell Vikings fans where they could find your work and what you'll be doing with your new position over there at the Purple Insider.
No doubt about it. Matthew, brought me aboard this last month. His business did incredibly well after he started it in May. He's built a really good thing there. You can get daily Vikings content straight to your inbox if you want. And it's really affordable if you want to support us month to month. It's daily podcasting, daily content, and you can check it out at purpleinsider.com or the Purple Insider Podcasts, wherever you like to find your podcasts. And I'll be contributing there in a podcasting and writing role. And I think it's fun because Matthew and I both have radio backgrounds. So we kind of like to get into debates. We like to talk each other's ears off. And then we supplement it with obviously the journalism we do out at TCO and all the interviews we conduct. So it's a great operation Matthew's built, and I'm happy to be on board. Both
of you guys do phenomenal work. So it's great to see you at the Purple Insider, and I know you guys are going to continue to do phenomenal work. But before I get you out of here, my last question for you, because I asked Matt this question, Collar this question a while back. What's your way too early prediction for the Vikings this year?
When I look at the trajectory of some of the teams in their division, I think the NFC North's there for the taking. I think the Lions with a new coach and a new quarterback, they're in rebuild mode. We don't know who the Bears quarterback is going to be yet. And, there's not really anywhere for the Packers to go but down. I mean, 2 13-3 seasons and a couple NFC championship game trips. The salary cap's going to catch up to them eventually. So I feel like there's room for the Vikings to take this thing, and with a little more injury luck on defense and continuity on offense, I think this is an 11-win team. So I'm bullish on the Vikings. I really am. I think that this can be a playoff team. And I think the question is, can it be like a Super Bowl contending playoff team? That's what I don't know yet. A lot of answers or a lot of questions that need to be answered. But I like double-digit wins for the Vikings this year.
Double-digit wins. I think 10 wins get you a playoff spot for sure, especially having 7 teams on each side. The Vikings can do it. The pieces are there. But more importantly, you're here. You're with the Purple Insider now, and we appreciate you jumping on this podcast today.
Thanks, Gabe. Thanks, Corso. Take it easy.
That's Sam Ekstrom, Vikings beat reporter from the Purple Insider.